Awesome. Hi, everyone. Long time no record. Um, it's been a while for me having to make one of these videos, so I hope that y'all are doing great, and let's get right into it. So for chapter 13, we're gonna be going over delivering your speech, and specifically we're going to cover the methods of delivery, how to deliver verbal messages, and nonverbal delivery aspects, and then rehearsing your speech. So what are the various methods of delivery? There's manuscript presentations, and so that's going off literally word for word what's written down like a manuscript. There's memorized presentations, and that's just memorizing as much as you can and then presenting. Impromptu is going to be so it's going to be a presentation that has little to no rehearsal, but that doesn't mean like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, so this is an impromptu speech. There has to be a level of like skill or advancement that the individual has when giving a speech. And then extemporaneous presentations is going to be a type of speech where it's a more casual speech, but you're still relying on notes to kind of guide the discussion. And so I would recommend using either a memorized presentation or an extemporaneous for your speech that will be due in a couple weeks at the beginning of November. Um, Otherwise, I would argue that like impromptu speeches are hard to do unless you are really well versed in the topic. But even then, like, because this speech requires sources and evidence, that can end up backfiring because you can forget to cite your sources or to bring in evidence. So I'd recommend definitely doing memorized or extemporaneous. Manuscript isn't that good just because no one likes to watch or hear someone read off of a piece of paper. If we were just going to do that, I think most people would prefer to just read it by themselves anyway. At least that's how I am. So assessing your learning, this is a little question that I made. So which of the following speaking situations reflects a person's use of an extemporaneous delivering style? And so would it be a person speaking from a written outline without memorizing the exact wording, a person reading a presentation from a written text or script, a person speaking without any advance notice, or a person delivering a presentation word for word from memory without notes? So obviously, rewind 30 seconds if you didn't catch my explanation. It would be A, because they are following notes, but they're not following the exact wording. The outline is just kind of there to help guide the speaker. And so how do you deliver verbal messages? You should use concrete words. So words that are basically as specific as they can be. Try to avoid vague terms. If you guys remember back from the verbal chapter where I go over the difference between concrete and abstract meanings, try to use unbiased words, especially since this is an informative speech. You should not, big X, do not try to persuade us. That is not the point of this presentation. You guys will get to do that later on. But right now you're just trying to teach us things. Try to be respectful to everyone, especially with like the way things are now and how your information can potentially hurt someone, using vivid words and verbal illustrations. Unfortunately slash fortunately for your speech, you will not be allowed to use any supporting materials. So like you can't use any images, you can't use any videos. It's purely just you speaking, but you can still use words that will create an imagery in the audience's mind. And then using simple words. So using words that the audience will understand, because you don't want to use a a big word in your paper that, or in your speech, that no one is going to know or understand, because then they're going to sit there and try to figure out what that word means and how it really connects to your speech. So some people may not like it, but I think making it short, easy, and to the point is the best thing. That way the audience is able to remember it better. And then using correct words. Avoid grammar mistakes. So the book claims that this communicates a lack of preparation. Obviously, there's exemptions to that, specifically with like neurodivergent people and other different things like that. But I kind of offer the advice of like, if you don't know how to say it and if you don't think you'll be able to pronounce it, try to find a word that you can replace it with that you can pronounce. And that way you don't have to sit there and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this. For example, you should remember from the informational speech video that I want you guys to cite it by the author's name or the title's name. And for example, say you don't feel confident or sure that you are pronouncing or will pronounce the author's name wrong, or correctly, you can just go ahead and use the title instead. That way you don't have to get caught up and like worry and be like, oh, I didn't pronounce their name right, instead. All right, and so verbal delivery. How can I make my audience remember? Figurative language, drama, little things like that. If you want to know more about this, I'd recommend going to the book. Otherwise, everyone took English in high school, I would hope. So, metaphors, similes, personification, try to still make it digestible, and simple, and not overcomplicating examples. So if you've noticed, like, analogies aren't on there because sometimes those can get lost in translation. And then same thing with omission, inversion, and suspension. Fun English terms. There's also cadence, and so parallelism, antithesis, repetition, and alliteration. More fun English words. I only kind of included these in here in case there were potential things you were considering to include in your speech and you just weren't sure if that would fit in. Otherwise, as I mentioned before, kind of sticking to what is simple for your speech will probably be the easiest in terms of delivery. All right, so now the visual aspects. And if you remember from our verbal chapter or nonverbal chapter, there's physical appearance. So that's going to be how you look. There's physical delivery, hand gestures, movement, posture, eye contact, such as facial expressions, vocal delivery, any visible, or I guess I shouldn't say visible, but go back to the nonverbal chapter if you need more help in understanding what nonverbals are. But basically, there are aspects of how you physically are going to present that can influence the way the audience both receives the message and remembers it. Again, I'm not as strict on these kinds of things due to some people being like neurodivergent again, or having speech impediments too, was connecting back to why I think certain vocal disfluencies aren't like a huge deal. I also am not the best at it. So don't worry, it's all about the information transferred. And I'm not going to require you guys to like wear anything fancy or have to stand up. As long as you're wearing clothes and you are presenting, I'd rather you guys spend more time working on rehearsing your speech than getting ready for it physically, in a physical presentation wise. Oh, I don't know what I did. Okay. And so, what are the audible aspects of nonverbal delivery? There's the voice, and so that goes to speech patterns, emotion, volume, rate, pitch, vocal disfluencies, like I mentioned, um, power of the pause. So, I normally get to use the power of the pause in class a lot more when we're face to face, just because I'm sure you've sat in class before and your teacher asks you a question and then they just sit there and they stare at you waiting for someone to answer. But in this case, in a speech, it would more so be for dramatization. So how do you rehearse your delivery? So practice verbalizing your presentation. Make the words come out of your mouth. Don't just say them in your head. Physically make yourself sit there, read it out loud a couple times, maybe look into the mirror and practice speaking, rehearsing your speech, record yourself on Zoom, um, practice using your speaking notes, focus on your main ideas, your sources, your quotes, any other stats, time your speech. Please time your speech when you're also rehearsing, because the speeches are 5 to 7 minutes, and if you are below or over, you will be deducted points for that. So try to make sure you're always within that 5 to 7 minutes for your speech, and then practicing good oral attributions. And the guidebook goes into detail on this on page 92 as well. All right, and so applying the 5 principles that we learned. So, awareness. How can you do this during delivery? Being aware of what you're doing, being aware of how much you're moving or how much you're not moving, or any other fidgeting things. I don't know if you guys have any students in class where they just sit and stare at themselves the whole screen the whole time during class, and you can tell everyone everyone can tell, but that would be an example of being aware of what you're doing as well as others. And so verbal messages, how can extemporaneous speaking help and hurt, or any of the other speaking styles? For nonverbal messages, what comes natural to you, what doesn't, what do you think you need to work more on? What do you think you've already got covered and you don't need to worry about? Listening and responding. How can you do this while you're speaking? How can you fluidly watch the audience and then take what's happening with them and adjust your speech? Obviously not overall, but how are you able to use the audience and their reaction to adjust your speech? And so I hope that this, adapt appropriately. Sorry about that. So what things can you adapt to your audience? But I kind of explained that as well. Awesome, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. It was a bit shorter, and I hope that you all are doing good on your speeches and that you're working through them. I haven't gone in and graded the outlines yet, but I will be doing that shortly. So please look out for that so that you can take my feedback and adapt your speech from there. Normally, I would be holding additional office hours on the 1st, but I have something the 31st. I will be holding, and I'll send this out in an email to you later. I will be holding rehearsal office hours, 4 speeches on sorry, I just want to make sure I get the right days so I don't have to go back and delete this part when I let's be honest, I don't edit, but okay. On the 30th of October from 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 12 to 2. I'll be holding office hours. For anyone who wants to come and rehearse their speech, it'll just be first come, first serve. One-on-one instances of getting help with your speech. And this will also be for 5 points of extra credit if anyone hasn't done anything yet for extra credit. This would be a good way to get some points in for the semester, and also practice for your speech, because I will say that every student that I've had come to my speech rehearsal office hours, whenever they come, they do exponentially better on the speech because they just are more comfortable with it. So I would highly, highly recommend, even if you don't practice with me, practice with someone. Get their feedback. What do they think that you could do better? Show them the rubric if you can't come to that time on Friday. And yeah, that's it. Have a nice day.